All right, today we are digging into what might be one of the most important defenses of free speech ever put to paper, John Milton's Areopagitica. It's a heck of a story about a poet, a revolution, and a seriously dangerous idea, an idea that would change the world. So, back in 1644, the poet John Milton wrote these powerful words. He wasn't just saying a book is paper and ink. No, he believed it was the precious lifeblood of a master spirit. So for him, destroying a book wasn't just vandalism. It was like killing reason itself. It's an incredible defense of the written word. So you have to ask, why, just 16 years later, did a king order that very man's books to be rounded up and burned by the public hangman? I mean, how does the great defender of books end up watching his own work go up in flames? Well, to get that, we have to understand the man and the absolutely crazy times he was living in. Okay, so to really figure out why his books got burned, we gotta get to know the man himself. This is our first stop, the rebel poet. And as you're about to see, he was a lot more than just the guy who wrote epic poems. You know, when you hear the name John Milton, you probably think of his masterpiece, Paradise Lost, right? That huge, sweeping epic about the fall of man. But here's the thing. For a huge part of his life, Milton wasn't writing poetry. He was a polemicist, a fiery, radical writer who dived headfirst into the political and religious battles of his day. And what a day it was. The 1640s in England, it was pure chaos and revolution. We're talking about the English Civil War, and this wasn't just a fight between armies with swords and guns. It was a war of ideas, fought with printing presses and pamphlets that were literally tearing the country in two. And in this fight, Milton did not sit on the sidelines. He was all in for the parliamentarians, the side that believed King Charles I had become an absolute tyrant. And Milton's weapon? His pen. He wrote pamphlet after pamphlet defending liberty and attacking the monarchy. But here's where the story gets a really interesting twist. Milton's big fight for liberty would soon pit him against, not the king, but his own allies in Parliament. And that brings us to Section 2. The licensing order, a move that would spark his most famous work of prose. So take a look at the timing here, because it's really key. In 1643, just a year into the Civil War, the very same parliament that was supposedly fighting for liberty passes this law, the licensing order. And that single act is what provoked Milton to write Areopagitica just 1 year later. So, what was this licensing order? Well, it was basically pre-publication censorship. It meant that before you could print anything at all, a book, a leaflet, anything, you had to get a government censor to approve it first. And if that censor didn't like what you had to say, well, your ideas would just never see the light of day. Simple as that. Now, for Milton, this wasn't some abstract debate. It was personal. He had just written some super controversial pamphlets arguing that people should have the right to divorce. I mean, a totally shocking idea for the time. And of course, the censors refused to approve them. Milton was furious. He felt like his own side was acting just like the tyrant king they were fighting against. So what's a writer to do when he's being censored by his own side? Well, Milton decided to fight back, and his weapon, fittingly, was a book. This brings us to Section 3, Milton's arguments, and the greatest speech that was never actually spoken. His response was Areopagitica. Now, he wrote it to sound like a formal speech to Parliament, but he never delivered it. Instead, in this brilliant act of defiance, he just published it as a pamphlet, without a license. He broke the very law he was arguing against. And inside this illegal pamphlet, Milton makes this incredible case for what he called the liberty of unlicensed printing. He really hammers home 3 main points. First, that censorship is a corrupt idea. Second, that reading everything, even the bad books, actually makes us better people. And finally, that truth is strong enough to take care of itself. Let's kind of break that down. You had Parliament saying, hey, we need licensing to keep things orderly. Milton fired back, no way. This was invented by our enemies in the Catholic Inquisition to silence us. Parliament argued, we have to protect people from dangerous ideas. Milton's response was basically, you're underestimating people. God gave us reason so we could wrestle with ideas and figure out for ourselves what's true. And this quote, this is probably his most famous argument of all. He's saying, don't be afraid of falsehood. Let it fight with truth out in the open. He had this amazing, almost unshakable confidence that if the fight was fair, truth would always win. It didn't need a government babysitter to protect it. I mean, it's a beautiful, powerful defense of liberty, right? So, did Parliament listen? Did they change their minds? Well, that brings us to Section 4, A King's Revenge. And we're about to see the immediate and pretty brutal answer to that question. The answer was no, not at all. In the short term, Areopagitica was a complete and utter failure. Parliament completely ignored him, the licensing order stayed right where it was, and censorship just kept on going. It must have been a huge blow for Milton. But believe it or not, things were about to get much, much worse. Okay, fast forward to 1660. The war is over. The parliamentarians lost, the monarchy is back, and the son of the executed king, Charles II, comes back to take the throne. And he came back with a list of people he wanted to punish for what happened to his dad. And right near the top of that list, John Milton. The new king didn't waste any time. He issued a proclamation ordering that Milton's books, the ones defending his father's execution, were to be hunted down and handed over to the public executioner to be burned. The guy who wrote that destroying a book is like killing reason was now facing the ultimate public rejection of his work. So Milton's books were burned. His political cause was totally lost. His life was in real danger. It really looked like the end of the story. But it was actually just the beginning of his ideas story. So Milton gets arrested. He has to pay a massive fine. By now, he's in his 50s, and all those years of nonstop study had left him almost totally blind. He was, for all intents and purposes, a defeated man. And yet, those ideas he put down in Areopagitica, the ones that failed so badly at the time, they were quietly starting to spread. And the impact was just immense. I mean, Areopagitica became a cornerstone text for the entire Enlightenment. Thinkers like John Locke and John Stuart Mill built their own arguments on top of it. Across the ocean, the American founders were drawing on its spirit when they wrote the First Amendment. And get this, even today, the U.S. Supreme Court still cites Milton's nearly 400-year-old pamphlet in major free speech cases. Milton wrote that a good book has a life beyond life. How incredibly fitting is that? Burning his books didn't kill his ideas. In a way, it proved his point. They took on that life beyond life, so much so that his words are now literally carved in stone over the entrance to the New York Public Library, a testament to their power. Which of course brings us to the big question for today. Milton was writing about printing presses and government censors. We live in an age of algorithms, content moderation, and viral misinformation. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. What does Milton's passionate, centuries-old argument for the liberty of unlicensed printing really mean for us right now?